Can you tell us more about our current water issues and concerns in the San Luis Valley?
So over in Saguache, we were on surface water, and we didn't have a well, and we were irrigating 160 acres off Saguache Creek, and so I became real familiar with surface water issues. And one of the problems was that surface water users are regulated through the priority system in Colorado, which means first in time, first in use. And so the very first ranchers that came here have priority number one. And so when the water is short on drought years, people with higher priorities get shut off. But they started drilling wells back in the 60s, and for some unknown reason they did not, even though they were mandated to by the state, they did not regulate the wells under the priority system. And so they basically feel like they have number one water right on the aquifer, and they pump, whenever they want. And recently they instigated an irrigation season to slow down the pumping in the fall and spring, but other than that, the wells have not been regulated until recently. They've had to join sub-districts, and the sub-districts are tasked with restoring the aquifer, but they haven't made any progress towards that in 10 years, and so they've got another 10 years. If they don't restore the aquifer to a certain level in that amount of time, the state's threatening to shut them down. Now, I don't know if they will or not, but that's what they're threatening. And so I just believe that if the state would have put the wells on a priority system just like they did the surface water users, that they'd be able to easily regulate it. Instead, they've come up with this whole machination that had to go through the courts and cost so much money in litigation, and it's just not been effective. They can't get the participation to fallow enough land to start restoring the aquifer. And you add that to the Closed Basin Project, which is also pumping what's supposed to be salvage water, but is no longer, there is no more salvage water, hasn't been for 20 years. The aquifer just keeps dropping, and this affects surface water users as well. So it's a double whammy for surface water users, because once the aquifer is gone from underneath your ground, all the water you're running down your ditch just sinks into the ground before it gets to where it's supposed to be. And so it's in surface water users' interest to restore the aquifer. And of course, wildlife and wetlands and riparian zones and all the vegetation involved, it all depends on that aquifer. And so it's my mission to work on getting that aquifer restored, and I've got some ideas on how maybe to do that, but I'll have to have the cooperation of the well users, and that's pretty tough to come by. I can just tell you right now that some people that have the wells have a mentality that they'll just pump them till the aquifer's dry, and hopefully theirs will be the last one to go dry. But you have some well users that are willing to sacrifice to try to restore the aquifer, and so we just need to try to get everybody to work together and get them on the same page, and that's just almost an impossibility when it comes to water, but it's certainly worth working on. And that doesn't even address people trying to export water.
Right.
So you drove through the Rancho Rosado on your way up here, and they want to drill 30 wells like 1,000 feet deep and pump 20,000 acre feet of water out of here every year over to the Front Range. So just exacerbate the whole problem.
Right.
But in the meantime, they're spreading all this misinformation about how there's all this excess water in the valley, which is nothing but BS. And so I've been going to their meetings and trying to expose them when they start lying like that. But they just keep right on going. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, but definitely kind of personal to have them next door.